Hey guys, I'm Matt Hernandez. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, I'm going to take you into Photoshop and show you how to make your color pop using LAB mode. Okay, so I've got a JPEG open in Photoshop of a senior picture I took last year. Rather than working on one file and changing the color space from LAB back to RGB, I'm going to make a duplicate. So to do that, you go up to Image, Duplicate. It's going to ask you to name it. Hit OK, and now you've got two, right? You've got a copy and the original. We're going to change this to LAB mode. So LAB is different from RGB and CMYK because it is more of what the eye sees, and it has different channels. So it's got a lightness channel, an A, and a B. I'm going to show you what those are as soon as we turn this into that mode. So go up to Image, Mode, LAB Color. Okay, now we're going to do this with curves. We're going to make our adjustments and our color grading with curves. There's a lot of different things you can do, and I highly suggest experimenting with this because you can get some really cool results. It's just a lot more versatile than working in those other color spaces. And you can't output with LAB mode. You need to know that, so you're going to have to save it back in one of the other color modes. But once you make your adjustments, that's why I'm using a duplicate image here. I'm going to flatten it and then copy and paste that back onto my original and flatten that and save it. A lot of times when you don't flatten an image in Photoshop and make some adjustments that have to do with color and contrast, it can act differently than if you have it flattened first. So that's why we're going to make all of our adjustments with our layers in this duplicate, flatten it, and then bring it back in, so we can preserve as much of the color differences as we can. That's what we're going to do here, is work on the color. Okay, so I'm going to go to my adjustment layers and hit curves. And so we've got lightness, A and B. Those are our channels, right? Lightness just affects everything. It doesn't have any color information in it, all right? So you need to know that. And then A, if you go up on the axis, it's red, down it's green, and then B is going to be yellow and blue, all right? On a curves adjustment layer, you've got your darks on the left and your lights on the right, okay? So let's go back to lightness. So anything you do over here is going to affect more of the darker parts of the image, and then here is going to be more of the brights, right? Okay, so I'm going to duplicate this first by pressing Command-J twice. So we've got 3 curves layers. I'm going to name the top one, I'm going to double click and rename it lightness, okay? So let's just add a curve, or an S curve here, just for some contrast. So we're darkening the dark parts a little bit and brightening the highlights just a little bit, okay? So adding some contrast. So there's before, there's after, just a little bit of an adjustment there. I'm going to go to the second one, double click and name it A. So let's go to A and then do the same thing. Just add a curved layer in there with an S curve there. There's before and there's after, so you can see his jersey's popping quite a bit more. Now it's affecting the skin also. So that's probably not a good thing because it's making it look more red. So what we can do is go down to the background and then go up to Select, Color Range. And then I'm going to eyedrop his uniform because we just want it to affect that, right? I'm going to hold Shift so the plus comes up and then select more of his uniform. Nope, that was too much. So we don't want his skin, right? Okay, I'm just going to start over. Okay, let's select his uniform and then there we go. So the darker areas aren't going to matter as much. If you go down on the fuzziness, it kind of retracts what you've got selected there. Well, this is kind of difficult because his skin has red in it. So when you try to select a specific red color, it can grab a lot of the skin when you don't want it to. Okay, that's probably good enough. Okay, that's good. Now I'm going to hit OK. Now it's going to make that our selection. So I'm going to go over here to our A channel and I'm going to Control click and delete that mask. I've still got my selection. Now I'm going to hit the mask button again. If I press Option and look at it, now there's where it's selected. So I'm going to select my brush tool real quick and make sure black is my foreground with 100% opacity, 100% flow, and normal mode. And just erase those areas there where his skin was showing up because we don't want that. Okay, now, there we go. Okay, now it's just on the jersey. And let's make that a little bit more pronounced there. Just increase the curves a little bit. There we go. There's before. Okay, now it's on. All right, that looks really good. Okay, now let's go to our third curves layer, name it B, and then go to our B channel and do the same thing. And we're gonna let this affect the whole image. So we're putting yellows in the highlights up here at the top and then blues in the shadows. So there's before and after. So let's group all three of those by pressing Shift and then clicking on the bottom one, pressing Shift and selecting the top one. It's going to select both of those and then everything in between, and press Command G to group. Now we can turn it off and turn it back on. And then I'm going to add one more adjustment here because that sky's a little bit too blue for me. I'm going to go to my background and then my adjustments one more time, and then hue saturation. If you pick this little hand tool with the arrows, then I'm going to select a color, which I want my blues. So the top slider is your current color, and then the bottom slider is what you're changing it to, whether or not whether you adjust the hue or the saturation. So maybe go to the left a little bit on the hue and then take the saturation down. There we go. That looks much better. Okay, so let's turn that off and then back on. I like that kind of gray with a little bit of hint of blue for blue skies rather than just electric blue, I think, which that's actually got a little bit of, looks like a little bit of purple in it, but I think that's much better. Okay, so if we group all of those together, then there's before and there's after. So it's a subtle difference, but it does add a lot of vibrance and contrast to it without getting too nuclear looking, which is if you did that, just adjust the saturation slider in Camera Raw or Lightroom or Capture One, then it's not really going to give you the results you want. This is a much better way to do it. Okay, so we're good. I am going to hold Shift on the group and the background and press Command E to flatten it. I'm going to press Command A to select everything, Command C to copy, go back to my original file, and then press Command V to paste. So there's before and there's after. You can see, to me, that looks much better color-wise. Everything pops a little bit more, there's a little bit more contrast. We didn't lose a ton of detail like in the shadows or anything. It was already pretty dark to begin with, but that to me looks awesome. Okay, so now we're gonna flatten that. So there's a couple ways you can flatten. You can press the menu here over in your layers palette and then go to flatten image, or you can press Shift Command E and it'll do the same thing. And then I'm just going to press Command S to save it, and then that's it, you're done. So like I said, there's a lot of different things you can do in LAB mode. I would just suggest experimenting, trying new things. That's what I started doing, and it's a great way to finish off your photos and get a lot more vibrance and cool effects with your color. So I hope you guys followed along easily with that. I hope everybody enjoyed it, and if you did, I'd appreciate a like and a share maybe. Definitely hit the subscribe button so that you can see my future videos. There's going to be a lot more to come. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.